So I've spent a little over 12 hours so far with Ghost Recon Wildlands, so let's talk about what I liked and what I didn't like. For starters, anybody anticipating anything remotely similar to past Ghost Recon games probably going to be a little bit disappointed because this is a totally new direction in the series that's already seen multiple changes since it first came out. It used to be just a first-person shooter, then it became over the shoulder, and now it's an open world game. The game takes place in a fictionalized version of Bolivia where there's this Mexican drug cartel. They've come down, turned Bolivia into a narco state. One thing that I will give them props for is recreating Bolivia. Like, at least on the PC, this map looks great. There's a ton of variety to it, whereas a lot of open world games, they'll look pretty much the same from one end to the other. This one, you got areas that are snow-covered mountains, you've got lush forests, and you got pretty much everything in between. So whenever you do go into a new area, it still feels a little bit fresh. It is a huge map, though, and some people were concerned that you might have a lot of emptiness to it. Like, what's a huge map if you don't have nothing to do? There are some areas that feel a little empty, but for the most part, you usually don't have to travel far before you find a village or a group of enemies. So to me, it definitely isn't just some empty wasteland just so they can say, here's this huge map. And the map is also littered with a lot of fast travel points, which is definitely appreciated in a game like this, and you'll be using it a lot. The map is divided into multiple areas or provinces which are controlled by different bosses. Your goal, of course, is to work your way up to the head kingpin. Without spoiling any of the story, I will tell you that you don't have to take out all the mini bosses before you get to the final boss, before you get to the kingpin or the cartel leader. There are a variety of missions that are included, of course, like killing everybody. That's one possibility. But you also have stealing vehicles, kidnapping, intimidating informants, blowing up supplies, and so on. So they did try to mix it up as far as what all you're doing. Like, some areas you will have to be stealthy, like you can't be seen and things like that. Now, the game can be played solo or 4-player co-op. There's really no question, though, that the best way to play this is definitely with other people. There's also a matchmaking if you don't have any friends, and I'm sorry. But I definitely had fun playing the game solo, but your teammates are so worthless for the most part. For a team that's supposed to be strategic, one thing that's sorely lacking is in-depth commands to your teammates. Like, it would have been nice, like, I don't know if you remember, but in the original Ghost Recon, unless I just totally made this up, but I think I remember being able to pull up a map and put waypoints that could be followed. And it would have been so nice to be able to do this in this particular game. But in this one, you only really have very simple basic commands that you can issue. It's like fire upon that group, or go there, or hold fire. But even when you tell them to do stuff like go fire at something, I mean, there's a chance they'll just sit there. And so I've also watched my teammates and enemy AI just sit there. I'll be looking at them through like this drone, just watching them to see if they're going to interact. And they'll be just a few feet apart looking at one another, and they won't ever fire their shots. So the AI, pretty dumb, at least when it comes to your teammates. The enemy AI is a little bit better, but they also have their moments. About the only thing that they are good for is for sinking your shots, which is a really nice feature, and also reviving you. But even whenever they revive you, I mean, sometimes they can be morons and revive you with an enemy standing right beside you. So you'll just get shot again as soon as you get healed and picked up, which is pretty frustrating. But the way you can approach each situation is really satisfying for strategy lovers. You can go in guns blazing, but if you're playing on the hardest difficulty, which that's the one I recommend if you're familiar with shooters, that's the one I'm playing on, you won't last long if that's the way you're playing in this particular game. You can parachute in, you can sneak in through the cover of darkness, take out power generators and alarm systems before you move in, sync up shots to take out multiple targets. When you're able to take out a base and you don't screw up, like nobody gets seen, you don't set off any alarms, any hiccups, things like that, it is really satisfying, especially, again, if you're playing on the hardest difficulty. I know a lot of people complained in the beta. They said that this was just too easy, that it wasn't much of a challenge. They got bored with it. But, I mean, that was the beginning level. It was just to familiarize yourself with all the mechanics. But the difficulty definitely jumps up in other parts of the map. So if you're worried about it being too easy, I mean, there's options to turn everything off. You can turn off everything individually or just turn off the HUD completely if you really want a challenge. And it will feel almost like a completely different game whenever you do that. There's also a ton of side missions that you can take on, which give you skill points, which you can unlock more abilities, features for you, your equipment, your squad. You can also unlock skills for friendly rebel groups, which once I started using those, they actually came in really handy. And of course, there's also a ton of customization when it comes to your weapons and your character. So let's talk about a few things that I didn't like. In my beta video, I talked about how I didn't like the way the vehicles handled. I still don't. I also think the drone is just way overpowered. I think they should definitely tone it down because as it stands right now, again, this is, of course, if you have all the HUD options on. If you take a drone and you fly it up, it just spots everything. You'll spot enemies that you don't even see, and it'll also spot them within walls, which is super unrealistic, of course. So to me, it's just way OP'd. That thing definitely needs to come down a few notches. Also, with it being open world, as with pretty much all open world games, you do run into a number of glitches. Most of mine were just funny. I haven't seen anything that's really game breaking. I haven't been caught up in any area that I couldn't get out of, things like that really pissed me off. But for the most part, it's just been silly things like the AI being able to come through walls in order to revive me and things like that. A few other items that tend to break immersion is, one, having the vehicles be able to climb over anything, including like the steepest mountain, which is a little silly looking at times. Also, having your friendly AI teammates, they just auto spawn on you if you up and leave them. So if you jump in a helicopter and you take off flying, they'll just automatically appear right beside you. But at the same time, even though that breaks immersion, I think it was probably the right design choice because it would be super frustrating to be able to have to walk everywhere if you just fall off a road somewhere and not being able to drive up a hill. And it would also be a pain if you got killed waiting on your teammates to board every vehicle with you. So I can totally understand those design choices. I also hate that there isn't a first-person view for the vehicles. To me, it just makes sense. I mean, you got a first-person view whenever you're shooting. You've got that option at least, which that is an option, by the way. You can choose to automatically look over your shoulder as a third-person view or first-person, so I've got it on first-person. And it would also be great to have that view for your vehicles because, especially in choppers, some of the choppers have miniguns, and they're almost impossible to use unless you go through a lot of trial and error attempts because you have no way of knowing where you're aiming, so that could be definitely frustrating. Overall, though, I have to say that I've had a lot of fun with this game. The hit detection and shooting feels good. I like the way that they divided up the map with the story, let you choose where you want to play and how. The gameplay also can drastically change in just a matter of seconds. Whenever you think you've done all the spotting that you need to do, you've scouted everything out, and then all of a sudden somebody walks out that you didn't spot, and so all of a sudden things change. They call in reinforcements. So to me, the gameplay is fun. Like I said, I've put in over 12 hours into it, and I've still got a ton more to do. It's not going to be for everybody, and no game ever is, but I think the drop-in co-op for sure is going to keep me coming back to this even whenever I'm done with the main boss. And then Ubisoft has also announced free DLC coming along with a free PvP mode that'll be coming down the road. So if they keep this game updated, I think that this is a pretty decent refresh for the Ghost Recon series. Overall, happy with the game, happy with the time that I've put into it, and looking forward to putting in some more. Now, Ubisoft, for full disclosure, they did give me this review copy, even though I've been talking about this game for months and I was planning on buying it myself, but they were nice enough to send this over so I could share it with you, but they did not tell me what to say. I don't get paid to do this. They just gave me the game for it, and I'm free to tell you what I think of the game, and that's what I think of the game. Overall, pretty happy with Ghost Recon Wildlands. That does it for me, The Red Dragon. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Are you listening? Damn.